Canby. I apologize for the tardy start. We ran right up to the wire on our work session and we needed to take a couple of minutes break and let the IT people do their thing. So we are getting started now. I call this meeting to order. And first on the agenda, we have the privilege of recognizing the retirement of our esteemed Chief Brett Smith. So I'll give it to George.
Come on, Brett.
I'm old news. That was last week.
So retired Chief Brett Smith, as you all know, retired April 1st, and we had a little retirement party here at the police department for him. But he served 40 years in law enforcement and over 11 years here. He will definitely be missed. He was a great mentor, leader, and friend. And one of the things that I told him to do was to keep his phone, because I'm going to call him on speed dial for consulting. So thank you, Chief. You want to say anything, Chief? Retired, Chief.
Yeah, I'm retired. I won't say a lot. This isn't about me. Last week, everybody was very kind and thoughtful in the things they said, but I just want to thank Canby for their support for our police department and me over the years, and really appreciate that. When we're working together, we get a lot done and accomplish much and create a safe city, and thank you for that opportunity. It's a great way to leave my career on a good note that way, and I'm very thankful for it. So other than that, I don't really have anything else to say. Thank you, citizens of Canby. I appreciate your service to us and your support for us as well. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Brett. I did express my appreciation for you at your retirement party. I do know that the mayor had other business he needed actually to take care of tonight. So I'm here on Zoom taking care of this. My intention was to be there tonight, so in your room. But thank you again for all that you've done for this town and the department. We all appreciate you.
Thank you.
Next up, we get to do the oath of office for Police Chief George Trapp.
Council President Hensley?
Yes, Scott.
Just introduce this. And before I do that, I just also want to acknowledge and thank retired Chief Smith. And we said all the goodbyes and the thank yous at the ceremony last week. But Chief Smith led this department well and he certainly left the Canby Police Department in very good shape. And on behalf of the staff, we thank him for his service. So thank you, former Chief Smith. And then this evening, we get to formally swear in our new Chief, George Trapp. Chief Trapp actually started the day that Chief Smith retired on April 1st. So he's on the job here for a few days. Chief Trapp, we're very excited to have him, and we think that this is an excellent transition for the department. Chief Trapp has been with the Canby Police Department for 23 years. For I think about the past 15 of those years, he's been serving as essentially one of our assistant chiefs in the duty of lieutenant or changed to captain recently. Chief Trapp and his family have been in Canby for quite a long time. George and his wife raised their two now grown children in Canby through the Canby School District. George is very active in our community, as I think most of you know. I'm certain you all know this, but perhaps for our new council members, just to reiterate, with Chief Smith's announcement of retirement well in advance and knowing our date certain, gave us the opportunity to work on a succession plan, which was to hire then Captain Trapp as essentially chief in waiting and appoint him as such, so that immediately he would become the chief as Brett Smith moved on his way into retirement. That was back in October, and the process has been, I think, a good one in that it allowed it allowed a very good and smooth and fairly lengthy succession and transition of handing off the baton from one chief to the next. And so that's been a very good thing. And I commend the council for supporting that decision, and also Joe Lindsay in his role at that time as the interim city administrator to appoint Chief Tro as chief in waiting. So, but with that, I think we have a swearing in of the chief tonight, and then that will also be followed by the swearing in promotion of Doug Kitzmiller to captain, backfilling Mr. Tro's former position, and then also the oath of office swearing in of our new officer, Todd Trapp. And so with that, I'll hand that off. I think, George, do we hand it over to our judge at this point?
Yeah, thank you, Scott. I think what we're going to do, the judge is going to swear all three of us at the end in together up here. So first of all, I just want to say thank you, Scott. I appreciate it. And thank you, council, for your support of the Canby Police Department, and for your support to allow me this opportunity to become chief. Joe Lindsay, I do have to shout out to him. He was interim city manager and now our city attorney. Thank you, Joe. I appreciate your support and encouragement throughout this process. As you know, I had big shoes to fill with the retirement of Chief Smith for 11 years. He's taught me a lot. He's been a mentor and a friend and a great leader. And he definitely will be missed over the next few years. I need to introduce my wife, Karen, who's here tonight. I would not be here without her. Karen grew up in Canby, so literally I would not be in Canby without her. Thank you, Karen, for all your support. Appreciate it. As you know, as Scott said, I've been in law enforcement for about 25 years, 23 years in Canby, and I'll tell you right now, there's no place I would rather work than this community. It has been great over 23 years. I not only work in Canby, but I am a part of the community. My kids attended school here, and I've been involved in many different organizations. I've had the pleasure to meet many great community members. Some of them are here, and I appreciate you coming tonight. I care about this community and its safety. I take pride that we are one of the safest cities in the state year after year. I believe the chief doesn't make the department. It's the officers on patrol who take the 911 calls, the detectives who investigate crimes you rather not know about, the sergeants who supervise and get phone calls at all hours, the record staff who do just about everything to keep us going, code enforcement who takes the calls that no one wants to take, and the command staff that work together as a team, and lastly, the community that supports us. All of us together make this department. I am grateful for all the members of the police department and the hard work that they do. My dad always told me from an early age, in whatever you do, do your best. As the next chief, I will do my best. Thank you for this opportunity. So my first official order of business is great. As a new chief, I get to promote one of our sergeants to take my place, and also to swear in one of our new officers. Again, after the introductions, I'll have the judge swear us all in together. So after a challenging and grueling promotional process, Doug Kitzmiller, come on up, Doug, was promoted to captain. His official start date was on April 1st, 2021. Doug Kitzmiller started with the Canby Police Department in January of 1998. Prior to that, he was a reserve officer with Westland Police Department, and he worked parking enforcement in Oregon City. And yes, he drove around in one of those little three-wheeled Cushman carts looking for parking citations. He has held the positions of officer, detective, patrol sergeant, and detective sergeant. He has been a firearms use of force instructor for our department for 22 years and has supervised and scheduled department-wide training for over 17 years. And let me tell you, that is no easy task. He is well respected not only at our department, but with law enforcement agencies in our area. On his off time, Doug enjoys hunting very much. He loves spending time with his family and watching his kids play sports. We are lucky to have Doug as part of our team. In his new role, Doug will oversee the patrol division. Congratulations, Doug. I know you'll do a great job.
Thank you. I'll keep this real brief. Thank you, Scott, members of the City Council. It truly is an honor to stand up here and get promoted to the position of captain within our agency. Like Chief Troll said, I've been with the city for a long time. I've seen a lot of changes within the city, a lot of growth, and also changes within our own department. But the one thing that hasn't changed is the support that we've received from the community, and that's always meant a lot to me. And I know it means a lot to the other officers in our agency. So as we move forward, I'm excited to see what the future holds for our agency. We have a lot of very talented, hardworking officers that work for our PD. And so I'm excited to be a part of, we are coming up on a time where we'll see a lot of promotions, a lot of lateral movement into specialty positions. And I'm just excited to be a part of that. I feel my role as a captain and my plan is to just do everything I can to make sure that, we're the most well-trained, well-equipped, professional, and proactive law enforcement agency we can. So with that, thank you. I do have to give a shout out to my family, my wife for putting up with me for 20 plus years, and my parents and in-laws, and one of my kids is right here. So thank you.
And I do want to point out that his dad, Al Kitzmiller, who is here, he was a law enforcement officer and he retired in the same position that Doug has taken at Oregon City Police Department. So it's pretty cool.
Thank you.
All right. I also have the pleasure to introduce our new officer, Todd Trapp. Todd, can you come up here, please? So I'm going to give you a little background on Todd. Todd was born in Waukegan, Kansas, to Dick and Denda Trapp, and he moved between Kansas and Oregon while growing up. He attended college at Fort Hays State University in Kansas and graduated with a bachelor's degree in justice studies and minored in sociology. Todd continued his studies at Portland State University to work on a master's degree in administration of justice systems. During this time at PSU, Todd became involved with an outdoor adventure ministry out of Canby Grove called Youth Dynamics Adventures. While working there, he met his future wife, Katie. Todd and Katie have been married 11 and a half years, and they have 3 girls and 2 boys. His youngest girl was just born this last weekend, and she is cute and tiny. Todd and Katie keep busy with their children, obviously. Baby. They have a small farm and they like home remodeling. Todd shared that he'd always wanted to be a police officer and follow in his dad's footsteps, who served as a police officer for 25 years. He remembers riding along with his dad and was inspired by his work. After working as a Portland police officer for the past 5 years in downtown Portland, Todd and Katie decided change was needed. They both were fond of Canby and loved the community after living here 15 years ago. So it was an easy decision for them to make the move. We are very fortunate to have Todd Trapp as a Canby police officer. He's excited to work and build relationships in a smaller community. So I would like to introduce our newest officer, Todd Trapp.
It's really good to be here. I'm excited. I've had a lot of officers pour into me while I've been here already in the 2 months that I've been here. And I'm excited to get to know the community and get really involved. So thank you.
So one of the things, Todd is just finishing his field training program. It went pretty fast, but this was his last week before he went by himself on the road. But the baby had some other plans and came a little bit early. But yeah, we're excited to have Todd back after he spent a little time with his family. So now I'm going to have the judge come up and do the honor of swearing us all in.
So we're going to do this a little bit differently because each of you has a different office that you're being sworn in for. So I'm going to leave that blank and you're going to have to remember what it is you're being sworn in for. Okay? So raise your right hand. Repeat after me. I state your names.
I, Todd
George
Trapp,
Trapp,
Being first duly sworn,
being first duly sworn,
depose and say
to depose and say,
that I will support and uphold the constitutions
I will support and uphold the constitutions
of the United States and the state of Oregon,
of
the United States and the state of Oregon,
the charter and ordinances of the city of Canby,
the charter and ordinances of the city of Canby,
remaining in compliance with the professional standards
remaining in compliance with the professional standards
established by the department's mission,
established by the department's mission,
values, and professional code of ethics,
values, and professional code of ethics,
department policies and procedures,
department policies and procedures,
and will faithfully perform the duties of the office of
and will faithfully perform the duties of
the office
of Chief of Police.
Portland, our police officer.
for the city of Canby, Oregon,
For
The city of Canby, Oregon,
to the best of my ability.
to the best of my ability.
Congratulations, gentlemen.
Thank you.
And now we're going to ask whoever you want to pin your badge on you. So Karen, pin my badge. We'll get out of there.
Photo op.
That's good. That's good. Thanks.
Don't hurt me. You sign these?
Yes, we have to send these.
Okay, it's official. Thank you.
Thank you, Chief Tro. Congratulations, Chief. Congratulations, Kitzmiller. And welcome, Officer Trapp. Welcome to Canby. Next up, we have citizen input and community announcements. I have word that we have Paul in the audience there. Is that right, Melissa?
Yep, that's correct.
Okay. All right, Paul, you've got 3 minutes. Come talk to us.
Show to, there's a camera right here. So if you line it up, I would like you to see that. So you,
Okay.
I'll let you do it again.
First off, I don't know if you can see this. This is my cat. Okay. That's the animal that gets abused because of the explosions. Is it coming in there or not? We'll let it go. By the way, thank you. I'll try to make this real brief. Let me get my glasses on, navigate with this mask. Before the 3 minutes start, if you don't mind, if I may ask one question, and if the answer is correct, then I'm done. You're getting ready to do the quiet zone. My understanding is that it's going to be, the bid will be open. So when you implement the quiet zone for the north side of Canby, will you restore our south side of Canby by giving us back our peace and quiet by eliminating explosive devices used at the varsity football games? That's the question. No answer yet? Silence then, okay. Last time I was here, I asked about filing a grievance, and basically my understanding is that I have no recourse to file a complaint for the unwanted and excessive explosions used at the Canby High School varsity football games. Is that correct?
I don't know if you have a grievance founded or not. That would be a good question for Joe.
Yeah, I believe that's a legal question.
We went over it a little bit last time, and I guess I'm going to turn here. Joe, did I paraphrase that
No, it's fine.
accurately?
Part of this issue is we have a noise ordinance, and the noise ordinance has some exceptions built in. And so the activity that we're talking about has a very explicit exception, which allows them to get outside of the normal noise ordinance. So this has been answered in the past by this council in that you gave an exception to the high school for specific fireworks at specifically football games. So in that regard, if he wants us to cite them for noise violation, there's a built-in exception. So that's why they aren't being cited for it, is because they're actually operating within our ordinance. There is another section of ORSs which allows individuals to try to serve violations on other individuals with the help of cities. And this type of activity is not enumerated in that statute either. So there really doesn't seem to be either state or local recourse for this particular activity.
Okay, thank you, Joe.
Okay, then I'll just get at it at hand here. And if you'll allow me, I might be a little over the 3 minutes. And by the way, I look at each and every one of you council members, and I appreciate what you're doing here. And it's like, this is not personal, but as a group of what the council is doing, I do object to. So I just want you to know that. It's not personal. Okay, I was pleased to see that the city councilors I voted for were elected. One councilor has reached out to me personally, and I'm grateful for that. Please join us. 3 councilors made value statements that are also important to me. They are as follows. We are living in a time where leaders need to be willing to listen, as well as stand firm in their beliefs despite the criticism they may face. Instead of making excuses, true leaders display courage and perseverance when times get tough. Defender of freedom. Our inalienable rights are endowed by our Creator, and as such, the government has no right to infringe upon them. Our children are watching. Democracy depends on ordinary people standing up and asking, how can I contribute? That is what I'm doing now. If you elect me, you will get no political agenda. You will instead elect 2 ears ripe for listening and 2 eyes seeking the middle ground. We have a responsibility to our neighbors and business community to be committed to protecting our livability, our values, our public safety, and everyone's constitutional rights, property rights, and business ownership.
He's quoting my VP now. Yeah, I'm doing it.
We should be assisting you, not throwing bureaucratic red tape in your way. It is difficult and perhaps impossible, as is destined to be a failure when a citizen seeks to redress the amended ordinance number 1489 when the governing body, the Canby City Council, deems the variance to be untouchable. That is, a citizen may not file a grievance because the City Council deems it so. The Canby City Council has imposed a rigorous condition, a condition that has been clogged or blocked from being remedied. There's a word for that, and I won't use it. You have obstructed the way to affect safety and happiness. I have provided the City Council with a signed petition. I have addressed the school district. I have attended many council meetings, and I have provided the City Council with personal medical information. Let me paraphrase a sentence from our Declaration of Independence. My repeated petitions have been answered by repeated injury. Have my rights, civil or constitutional, been violated? One question is, how did we get here? We got here by being complacent, giving in a little at a time. Example, I don't live in that neighborhood. My children or my pets aren't being abused by the explosion that signifies nothing more than 6 points. It's only tradition. Remember to open your eyes, listen with your 2 ears, stand firm in spite of criticism, display courage, protect everyone's constitutional rights, don't throw bureaucratic red tape in our way, and make sure government does not infringe on our rights. Also, remember that our children are watching. So am I. If we can move anywhere with this, I would greatly appreciate it. Or if I'm going to keep coming here and it's going to just be me ranting and you listening, I can keep doing that too. I'm hoping that we can come to some accord here. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Paul. Yes, you did. You quoted, I think, all of our voters pamphlet statements, and I think we all meant that sincerely when we wrote them. And we do our best to serve the entire community. And I do appreciate you coming and expressing your views. So thank you for your time tonight.
Yes, and you may hold my feet to the fire also. Good night.
Have a good night. Thank you. Okay, we're going to move into ordinances and resolutions. First up is, well, I'll give it to Melissa. Or no, I guess it's Scott coming up. Scott can do it.
Thank you, Council President and council members. This is a second reading regarding the vacation of public right-of-way on North Maple Street related to the 7-acre subdivision development. My knowledge, we haven't received any additional input on this. So this is simply a request for the second reading of the street vacation. And we'll be happy to answer any questions.
Okay. Well, I'll first take a motion before discussion.
Tracy, I move to consider ordinance number 1545, an ordinance vacating 2 small portions of North Maple Street public right-of-way that were formerly part of a cul-de-sac at the street's north terminus.
And I have a second from Councillor Bangs. It's been motion's been made by Councillor Varwig, second by Councillor Bangs. Is there discussion or questions? Councillor Parker. You're muted. You're still muted, sir.
I'm wondering if that's a typo there, that it should be formerly, not formally. And I don't know if that makes any difference in terms of the motion.
That is a fair question. Joe?
Can I see?
Oh, yeah. Sorry. We're checking.
Okay.
It should be. It's former.
Yes, correct. Thank you. I would ask to amend by interlineation to make the word formally turn into formerly.
I did read that as formerly, and so I believe that, and as I made the statement, it was formerly. So as far as the official motion, it's formerly.
Okay, so we don't need to amend the motion because he fixed it on reading it. So any other discussion or questions? We have gone over this last time.
I'll edit that just then as a scrivener's error. Thank you.
Very well. All right. Motion was made by Councillor Varwig, seconded by Councillor Bangs. It's second reading, so roll call vote.
Councillor Bangs?
Aye.
Councillor Hensley?
Aye.
Councillor Parker?
Aye.
Councillor Spoon?
Aye.
Councillor Tibbles?
Aye.
Councillor Varwig?
Aye.
Okay, the motion passes 6-0. Moving on to the second ordinance.
Thank you. This is an ordinance that would authorize a work change order to a current contract with the R.L. Riemer's company. This contractor is doing work for us right now at our wastewater treatment plant. They are doing work mostly related to our Clarifier. And this is a contract requesting a work change order in the amount of $302,671.33. That's a substantial increase, and that requires us to come back to council because of the amount and the percentage of increase. requires an ordinance. In this particular case, we are asking for your consideration of declaring an emergency such as that would take effect immediately upon the second reading in order to coordinate with our existing contractor that's on site. The purpose of this work change order is such that we have in our 5-year CIP, that's our capital improvement plan at the wastewater treatment plant, a number of improvements and repairs, and we have this money in our budget. And so what we've determined is that this work that the contractor is currently performing at the wastewater treatment site is very related to additional items that we would have gone out and had to have bid separately, which would be much more timely and also likely more costly. So we're trying to be more efficient, more timely, and also we're trying to save the city money, frankly. So we determined that this was all related to the current contract as such that we could just do this as a work change order while they're already on site, mobilized with equipment and staff and all of the needs. So that is the request here. And again, the declaration of emergency, I know we don't like to do this unless necessary, but the need here is that the contractor is on site and before they conclude and demobilize, we want to basically take advantage of this opportunity. So again, all of this work that we're asking for in the work change order is already envisioned in our capital plan, and it's already envisioned in our budget. And yes, and of course, being at our wastewater treatment plant, this all relates, and I think with your emergency declaration, you can also justify that by the fact that this relates to the health and the welfare of our community because of the needs at the wastewater treatment plant. So with that, what we would ask for your approval of the first reading and declaration of emergency that would allow us to enact this after the second reading, which we would bring forward at the next meeting, correct, Joe? Yeah. So we would bring this back again for a second reading, but then we would not have to wait the normal 30-day waiting period after second reading.
Right. Okay. And thank you for explaining the use of the E-clause. That's my favorite question to ask, as everybody knows, and you'll learn. So thank you for preemptively answering that. I will take a motion in a second before discussion.
I believe we can have discussion if it's questions of the staff report prior to the motion, correct? For clarification.
Scott?
Yes, a question of Scott. I'd like to ask a question. Just more of a clarification, and I'm sure that I did hear that. This isn't due to an erroneous part in the contract earlier. This is added work, correct?
That is correct, Counselor. This is not any kind of an error in the former bid. Again, it's simply work that we anticipated that we would need to do, and we realized that we can tie this to our existing contract.
Okay, great. I'll make a motion if there's no other questions.
Looks like Council has a question.
Yeah, I have a quick question, if I could. You mentioned we were essentially saving city more money, and I'm assuming that you're referring to the cost of maneuvering personnel and equipment on site when you're saying that. But have we done an examination of this going through the formal RFP process and what that potential savings would look like versus the savings of on-site? I guess that's the information I'm curious on. How can we really get to more costly or less costly if we don't know what the formal RFP process will bring us?
Thank you, Councilor Tibbles. That is an excellent point, an excellent question. We did not do an analysis of the potential cost savings per se, and I will make sure I clarify. This is we are recommending this because we believe it will result in cost savings. What we know is that we would not have to pay mobilization costs for companies, possibly more than one, to come back out. I can't tell you exactly what that is because we only know that if we do the bid process. What we also do know, though, is that the work that's involved in this change order would have to be done through a formal bid process with one or more bids, and that in itself is fairly work intensive. So it does cost staff time, and there certainly are resources involved in that, the production of the bidding process. But again, I want to be very clear. I'm not telling you that I know the exact amount of that. It's likely that it's several thousands of dollars. If you would like that, we could certainly do an analysis and bring that back to you and see if we can at least kind of rough that out. But it is a little tough to estimate when you don't actually bid that out. So
Can I add one thing about that too?
yeah, and our attorney wants to add something here.
The RFP that we did do with these folks, they were the lowest responsive bidder. So, you can't always assume that they would be the lowest bidder this time, but their prices were really good prices to start with. And now that they're in place and they're working with us well, there is some assumptions, but those are based on the fact that they were the lowest price before, and it should be the cheapest way to keep going with somebody who's working out with us. So that's kind of some of the reasoning too.
Councillor Banks.
I move to approve Ordinance 1546, an ordinance authorizing the city administrator to execute change order number 4 to the 2020 Wwtp primary clarifier improvements contract with RI or potentially RL Riemer's company for completion of site restoration tasks and declaring an emergency to come up for a second reading on April 21st, 2021.
Or it'd be April 17th, I believe. Would it not?
Well, not according to the, page 62 in the council packet.
At the next meeting, that works enough.
I did have that whole thing memorized, so I just forget exactly.
Do I have a second? Okay, it's been moved by Councillor Banks, seconded by Councillor Varwig. All those in favor of approving ordinance number 1546 to come up for second reading at the next meeting, say aye.
I think, wait, so just as a point of order here, while I appreciate Councillor Barwig and Tibble's questions, and also the one that Councillor Hensley was going to ask had Scott already answered it, those discussions really, those questions should all happen in a discussion. So I think we have to put the thing on the table, then discuss it. So I'm not trying to make us think about it. I don't think it matters a huge amount, but we really should move the motion, then discuss, then vote.
As I tried to do, but we historically have done it in reverse, so habits. Thank you for that. I appreciate that, Councillor Banks. All those in favor? All right. So that moves 6-0. Next on the agenda is consideration of ordinance or 1548. Scott?
Thank you, Council President. This next ordinance is, we're running through a few ordinances here related to contracting. This is to authorize the city administrator to enter into a contract with Green Play LLC to work on a Parks and Recreation Master Plan and Park System Development Charge, so SDC, methodology update for the city. As I believe you are fully aware, and we actually had a recent discussion, somewhat recent discussion with a kind of a work session type of discussion with the Parks and Rec Board. The Parks and Recreation Master Plan is something that we need to do. We are well overdue for this work for the city. The last update to that was in 2002, so we are past due. The process here was that the city advertised an RFP, a request for proposals. We received 4 proposals, and there was a committee assembled that was comprised of a representative from the Parks and Recreation Board as well as staff. The proposals were scored and evaluated based on the criteria that was in the RFP, and the Green Play LLC company and their proposal was the one that came out on top of that process, and thus that's the recommendation. We're looking at a project that is around $150,000. The funding source is the Parks SDC fund, which is appropriate for planning purposes for the city's park and rec plan. And I would suggest to you that this is probably going to help the city substantially in understanding what its priorities are in parks and recreation, not just parks, but also recreation, in priorities, what to develop, where to develop it, what improvements to put into our existing system, what types of funding mechanisms we might want to consider, both current and potentially things that we don't have in place, and all types of other things. This will be a very public-facing process. First of all, our Parks and Recreation Advisory Board will be the lead steering committee for this project. So they will be heavily engaged, and they will have input along the way as to how this unfolds and how the process moves. There will be opportunities for individuals and groups in our community to participate in various ways. We will engage stakeholder groups that are involved in various elements of parks and recreation and property ownership and those types of things. The other component of this is it updates our methodology on our SDCs. So your SDCs are based on a formula or a methodology, and the Parks SDC methodology was last updated in 2013, and it is advisable to update that probably about every 5 or 6 years. So we're kind of a little bit past that. And so the idea was to tie that into the master plan process and do that at once. And that makes a lot of sense because you're basically tying what ends up being your capital plan with your funding process, and the SDCs are a big part of that, and it brings those two things together. So this is an important, I think, and a monumental moment for us to approve this moving forward in our Parks and Rec master plan. I know that our Parks and Rec board have been very anxious and excited to assist and advocate and help move this along and get to the point where we have very clear and updated current priorities in our Parks and Rec system and be able to have a roadmap going forward. So with that, I would ask for your support of this first reading of the ordinance tonight.
Thank you, Scott. Councilor Barwick.
Make sure we do it right this time. I move to approve ordinance number 1548, an ordinance authorizing the Canby City Administrator to enter into a contract with Greenplay LLC to prepare a Parks and Recreation Master Plan and Parks System Development Charge Methodology Update to come up for a second reading on April 21st, which is 2 weeks from now, 2021.
All right, and I have a second from Councilor Spoon. It's been moved and seconded to approve ordinance number 1548, an ordinance authorizing Canby City Administrator to enter into a contract with Greenplay LLC to prepare a Parks and Recreation Master Plan and Park System Development Charge Methodology Update to come up for second reading April 21st. All those in favor?
No discussion first, please.
You have a question, Mr. Councilor Banks?
Yeah, I have just one question for Scott, and I think I know what the answer is already, but this is normal, right? This is what cities do all across America? Okay, I wanted to confirm that for the record.
Okay, any other questions?
Tracy, I had my hand up.
Oh, you know what? You have a plant right there too. It was hard to see on my screen. Go ahead, Councilor Parker.
Well, I think probably only Councilor Hensley and I remember that this first came on our agenda 5 years ago, that we tried to do a master plan. And I want to emphasize it's my expectation that the Parks and Recreation Committee drive this, that we want this to be a citizen-driven type of thing. And we want heavy public input and some real mechanics behind this, because I don't know of anyone was completely pleased with the process of our splash pad, that we do need to find a way to develop and monitor our park projects and find ways that balance the investment, the maintenance, the inclusiveness, and provide us with a goal for changing demographics in our city. So I appreciate the fact that finally we've got this on our agenda, and I'm excited to see this push forward. This, in fact, will be a legacy project from this council.
Thank you, Councilor Parker. Councilor Tibbles, you're unmuted. Did you have a question?
No, I'm just leaving myself open to applaud others' comments. Sorry, I forgot. I didn't know I was not muted.
Okay. Well, you can unmute and say aye, or you can just wave your hand. All those in favor? All right. Passes. Next on the agenda is the resolution number 1345. Mr. Archer.
Thank you again. So another agreement here. This is a resolution, not an ordinance, that enters us into an IGA, an intergovernmental agreement called the Master Grant Agreement with the state of Oregon and specifically the Department of Transportation. The purpose of this IGA is that it allows us, the city of Canby, to basically it allows us to receive this certain type of program funding for streets. This is something that we've received in the past. The specific source is a federal source of funding called Surface Transportation Block Grants. And the state of Oregon is the agency that administers those. So that's federal funding that passes through the state and to us. And these are transportation project funds that we will use. We've spelled out some of the projects that we would use these for in your packet. Specifically, what we're looking at is street projects on North Maple Street, North Pine Street, Northeast 10th from Locus to Maple, and also Northeast 10th from Maple to Pine. So in other words, we're just entering into an agreement that allows us to receive funds that ODOT would like to pass through, and we will apply those funds to the street projects that we've already identified. And it brings to Canby $207,000 and change in street funding projects. So we would ask for your consideration and approval of this agreement.
Okay, do I have a motion?
I'll make a motion. I move we approve resolution number 1345, a resolution entering a master grant agreement, quote, agreement between the state of Oregon acting by and through in its Department of Transportation, ODOT, and the city of Canby, recipient, to come for, is that second reading at the next meeting?
Listen,
Oh,
it shouldn't say first reading, ma'am.
okay. That's why I was like, is it coming for a second reading? I've never seen that. Okay, thanks.
Have a second. Okay, it's been moved by Councilor Spoon, seconded by Councilor Varwig. Any discussion? Councilor Banks.
Just a procedural one. Scott, why is this one a resolution versus an ordinance? It was my limited understanding that a resolution is like an opinion. I'm just curious.
Yeah, come on.
Ryan, you can see me. So if you look in the back of the charter under miscellaneous provisions, it says that any contract for expenditures over 50,000, this is actually not an expenditure. This is a way for us to get money. So it's actually an agreement that basically says if we get the money, there's a pass-through price that the state gets. And so with that reasoning, we wanted it to be a resolution because frankly, the ordinance has not only you have to wait for 2 readings and then you have to wait for 30 days. So we just wanted to get it through, and it is my legal opinion that we're following that provision.
Yeah, I'm fine with that. I was just curious. Of course, I have read all of those codes. I just forgot that particular clause.
Okay, any other questions or discussion? All those in favor? All right, passes 6-0. Next on the agenda is discussion regarding South Ivy Street undergrounding of utilities. Scott?
Yes, thank you again. And also thank you for the support of all of those ordinances and that resolution to move ahead on all of our good business. So this item is related to the South Ivy Street project and the question around the undergrounding of utilities. And within that project, we've had some conversations around this previously, and we're nearing the point of where we need to make a decision. Tonight, this is on your agenda simply as a discussion item. As such, we're not asking you for any decisions, but kind of this is setting the table, and we would like to bring this back, depending on your discussion here. We'd like to bring this back to you at the next council meeting in some form for a decision, a formal decision. So as a reminder, on our South Ivy Street from essentially 99 to about where Lee Elementary School is at, the county is going to do a road project that will be a comprehensive improvement to that road. It'll improve the roadway itself. It will widen the road. It will add sidewalks and bike lanes, and it'll make the road much safer and much more travelable. In this conversation, and that project now is anticipated to be done in 2023. The county was going to do that in 22, and it got moved out. I think we discussed that with you a little while back, that it got moved out by about a year on their project timeline. So the discussion here was that as part of this process, Canby Utility Board, CUB, would have essentially left the overhead power in place, but done some moving of poles and lines and to accommodate the new roadway, but not to underground those. And so there was I think there was interest by some of the council, at least, to consider maybe undergrounding those lines at the same time that we did this project with the county. We've reported to you before, and I'll just sort of revisit this. So Canby Utilities' estimate of their cost to have moved those lines, those poles and lines, and the work that they would have done by leaving the power overhead is around $300,000. And so what they've committed to us is, at least verbally, and Mr. Murphy, the general manager of CUB, and myself have had several conversations around this. If we did this, we would formalize that with some type of an agreement. But basically, CUB would commit that $300,000 to the city towards our cost of the undergrounding. And so what we've done is, working with the county project folks, the engineers and the project team on this South Ivy project, is the project engineer provided us a formal cost estimate of undergrounding those utilities. And that cost, again, we've talked about this before, is estimated at $1.3 million. So the remaining cost above the $300,000 from Canby Utilities contribution is about $1 million on the city's part, unless any of that changes. And again, these are all estimates, and so actual costs at the time of bidding can either go up or down. But this is a professional engineering firm giving an estimate that usually we feel pretty confident in those, and oftentimes they will provide conservative estimates, meaning, that is to say, conservative in the vein of they'll tend to be on the high side, hoping that they come in under that amount. But that's usually a safe number for us to work with and hopefully always work out. We do not have this project, the undergrounding project, in our anticipated in any of our capital plans. But that is not to say that we could not fund it. Now, what we do have is we have our road project CIP list for the next 5 years with various items funded. In a work session tonight, the idea or the project of, for example, the connector between the industrial park and 99 came up. That is funded in our current street capital improvement plan, along with other things that have been formally identified. This is not in that plan. However, if you, council, wish to still go forward on this, you can direct me, and I'll work with our staff team to fund this project. We have options. There will be some considerations on how we would want to do that. The options range from, we can certainly replace projects in our current street CIP, which I suspect we do not want to do, and that would not be my recommendation, but that is a possible option. We do have other options like providing, we can do an inter-fund loan from one fund to another. For example, we have a good contingency in our wastewater treatment plant fund that we could loan to ourselves, and you can do that on a 10-year loan for this project and pay that back slowly over that time. We have some other potential funding sources that I'm looking at, but the other sort of wild card here is that we have I discussed with you recently the American Recovery Plan. The city will be receiving some funding from the stimulus package that was recently passed at the federal level. We don't know for certain what the exact parameters on that are, and we believe, though, that some of that is able to be used for infrastructure purposes. We just haven't received full description yet from either our federal funding parameters or the state who will be distributing that money. That is possible that could be eligible for that type of use. The other thing is, we know that at the federal level, there is a significant infrastructure package being considered that if that were to pass, it would be likely that we would receive some of those funds, and those would be eligible for specific things that are infrastructure, which I think this certainly is. Those are just some generalized discussion points. Again, we're not pinning that down exactly, and I'm not asking you to decide anything tonight, but we are essentially revisiting this with you because the county has asked for us to make a decision, sort of a thumbs up or thumbs down, a go, no go on the undergrounding by the end of April. So again, sort of having this discussion tonight, and then if, depending on your direction or your discussion, we can bring it back to you to formalize at the next council meeting. And I want to, again, reiterate, you do certainly have the option to fund this in some different ways, and we can talk about exactly how to fund it, or you can ask me to explore some different options and present those to you to select from. So I see that we've got some questions, and I'll pause to answer those questions.
Yeah, we do have some questions. The first one I saw go up was Councilor Spoon.
Thank you, Council President Hensley. Scott, I'm still an advocate for undergrounding. I think that it's a legacy project, like Councilor Parker has often said, and I think that road is, it's time to underground. That road's heavily used. A lot of students use that road, and it will just be a much better experience overall. My question is, has anyone on staff looked at whether it potentially qualifies for the ODOT Safe Routes to School grant? And if so, could that potentially free some planned money for the overall project that we could attribute to undergrounding? I was thinking about it as I was riding my bike along that road, how unsafe that walk still is for students, and maybe there's some potential to get some Safe Routes to School money through ODOT. I just didn't know if we had looked at it.
Thank you, Councilor Spoon. I can't say that we've specifically looked at that source. I don't know for certain that we haven't either, but that I don't think I've heard much about that one, but that is something that we could certainly look into. I think we've got some different sources that we could consider, but that's something that we could look into.
Yeah, I don't know that necessarily undergrounding the lines would qualify for the project, but I think our portion of the actual development, putting in sidewalks, all of that has potential to qualify. And if that frees some money up that we had set aside for that project that we could move, is kind of what I was thinking, just for more clarity.
Yep, understood. Thank you.
Councilor Parker.
Thank you, Tracy. Yes, I want you to keep this project alive. I want you to look for the funds. Scott, let's try and parse out the American Recovery Act. Now, there have been two stimulus bills. One just passed. There was one earlier passed. At one point, you talked to us, and I think the number was in the range of $3.2 million. Which stimulus package was that? Was that the first one or the one that just passed?
That was, yes, that was a recent conversation about the one that just passed, which is the American Recovery Plan. Last year, there was the CARES funding that we expended on things directly related to COVID and so forth. But yes, this is, and your estimate is almost exactly right. It was, we're estimated to receive $3.3 million. Yet to be distributed and also yet to be receive specific parameters, but there was this broad information that said one of the things that it could be applied to is infrastructure, but it didn't get into, you know, the sort of further details of that. And it was like, basically the instructions were, we'll be back and tell you more information once we get into distributing the money. So that certainly is on our radar for that.
Well, from a policy direction, my vote would be go out there, try and find the funds. Do not take it away from Walnut. That needs to remain our priority. But if we have $3 million coming in stimulus funds, and I don't see where we've got that particularly dedicated, and $500,000 coming in from the library, and 20% in reserves, I'd say I'm willing to put that funds into something that's going to change the face of Canby forever. There's going to come a time in this city and other cities where overhead lines are going to look like something out of the 18th century. And this is an inflection point that we have a chance to cast a future for Canby. And it's one where lines are undergrounded. Frankly, I'd like to break open our development ordinance and require all new development be undergrounded. But to the question today, yes, I'd like to see it. Yes, I'd like you to explore the options.
Okay, Councilor Varwig.
Thank you. Yeah, I agree. I think that if we don't find a way to underground these utilities, then we might as well consider it a failed project. Those utilities have to be undergrounded, but I will not support taking money from Walnut Street Extension because that will also constitute in my mind a failed project. If we have to take money from there, I think we can find money creatively somehow. My biggest question though is when we have that agreement with Cub, this benefits them as well. If there's an increased cost, can we put in the agreement that whatever percentage they are paying of the cost, they will also be responsible for that same percentage of the increase? If it's 10% of the cost, 300,000 of, so I guess about 30%. Would they pay 30% of the increase? I think that would only be fair and responsible.
Thank you, Councilor Varwig. Councilor Tibbles.
Yeah, thank you, Seth. I wanted to start with just a question. When you say the county has directed us to make a decision on this by the end of April, let's just play city versus county here. What happens if we don't adhere to that advice? What holds us to following that direction of coming up with a decision by the end of April? In other words, are we being rushed to a decision that we could kind of go through a lot of these unknowns like the American Funding Plan and what are going to be the stipulations that go along with it? And we don't know that yet. And so I guess what freedom do we have to not adhere to the end of April as a decision?
Yeah, thank you for that question. Just I want to be clear on that too. And it was I would say I would use the term request. So the county requested a decision from us by the end of April. It's a very cordial working arrangement. I actually sat in on a meeting with the county's project staff as well as with Jerry Nelzine, our public works director. And we had a cordial conversation and they were attempting to basically get us to make a commitment of some time in the near future that we would provide them a decision. They were asking actually for initially mid-April, and I pushed them out to the end of April and said we'd like to have the opportunity for at least, I could see a couple of council meetings in front of us here and having this type of conversation. So the key, I guess the challenge with the timing of that, to your question, Councilor Tibbles, is that the county is, as far as this component, it affects their design of the project. And there's also some right-of-way issues that'll need to be addressed of acquiring certain rights of way, whether it's above line or above overhead or undergrounded. And so they're trying to give themselves enough time to adjust the design accordingly and also to work on the right-of-way acquisitions necessary. And actually, we'll probably be back to you, Council, at some point here to talk about some of that that right-of-way component of this project as well. Regardless of this undergrounding question, there's some right-of-way stuff we'll have to come back. So just to be very clear, Councilor Tibbles, to your question, they requested end of April. I suspect if we asked for some further time, they would probably give that to us. But it's what it does is it puts them in a position of having to sort of hold on the design and those other pieces of work. So, initially they were asking us for this decision back in, I think, in November. So we're 6 months or so out from that, 6+ months out from that original discussion anyway. So, but I realize that a couple of you weren't involved in those discussions until after the first of this calendar year. So I hope that.
Yeah, it does. Thank you, Scott. I appreciate it. I think where my mind is there's a lot of variables that the what ifs that you presented on ways of funding. And I just don't, while I agree with the project and I agree with, I don't want to take funds from the Walnut project, and that to me, it seemed like, at least I had expressed the desire to want to have this be a part of a work session because there were so many complex ways that you could solve this problem. And the challenge with putting a deadline to it is, are we doing our due diligence in actually kicking the tires on all the creative ways of funding the project? Now, I support it, but I don't think that this is one of those decisions that I like to put a rush decision. So I would like to see much more detail on the ways we could fund, but I'm not sure even at that point would I be at a point where I would want to vote without having further conversations and kicking the tires on those proposals that you're going to bring. So that's where I stand.
Thank you, Councilor Tibbles. Councilor Banks.
Yes, thank you, Councilor Hensley. Just to echo what Councilor Tibbles was saying, it does seem frustrating that the county is requiring this decision so quickly. It seems like we might be 6 months behind when they asked, but they just kicked the can down another year. Is it possible, and I have a couple questions here, so I'll ask them and then I'll let Scott take over. Is it possible that we can just agree that we want to get this project done and decide later how we're going to pay for it? Secondly, do we have any idea what Canby Utilities already spent to rehang all the wires that just got knocked down in the ice storm? I think 30% is a little small. On the other hand, we're looking at Canby taxpayers on the one hand versus Canby taxpayers on the other hand. So maybe it doesn't matter. We're all paying into the same pots, whether it's Canby Utility or other funds. And actually, you guys already addressed one of my third questions. But can we decide to bury it for sure, but not decide how to pay for it just yet?
So yes, thank you, Councilor. Yes, absolutely. I wanted to reiterate that point anyway, so thank you for asking that question. So that, and this might kind of touch back to what Councilor Tibbles was also asking about with having more time to consider options. Yes, the city can agree that we would want to go forward, and we would enter into some type of an agreement with the county that basically said, we're asking you to include this in your project, and we will commit to covering those costs through some method. And then we would basically have up to 2 years to determine, or possibly even more than that. I don't know when the quote unquote bill would come due, whether it's the beginning or the end of the project. But yes, absolutely, we could agree to move forward and then determine exactly how to fund it. And I do want to say I'm confident that we can fund this without, again, and I've heard you all clearly, and I agree with you, without impacting our current street projects, in particular the Walnut Street or the 99 to Industrial Park extension. We can fund it without doing that, but we have some different options we could think about. So that's part one. And then part two of your question about the agreement with Canby Utility. So I can't speak for them. And then the other comment earlier about, perhaps that amount of their contribution being tied to the percentage and maybe a moving target, but the percentage of the total project. That's something we would need to work out in agreement separately with Canby Utility. I think what we would know is hopefully the $1 million would be our maximum liability, and perhaps we would have ways of negotiating down from that with our agreement, possibly with Cub. Also, different ways of funding that, and then perhaps depending on the final cost of the project, it always could come in less than that. So we have some different moving targets that all of which we'd be able to explore. But the request from the county to give them a yes or no is simply, you don't have to tell us how you're paying for it. Can you just tell us if you want to do this so we can get to work on the design piece of it? I do suspect if we asked them for more time, we could get it, but I think at some point we're kind of getting to that. We're getting within that ballpark of, letting them know out of, if nothing else, out of courtesy to give them the direction on their projects.
Well, my 2 cents, I would agree with Councillor Tibbles. We need more information. I, for one, don't think we should say yes until we know how we're going to pay for it. To me, that sounds a lot like you have to pass the bill before we can read the bill. I'm not going to vote for anything that I don't know how we're going to pay for it. And Walnut Street is a non-starter. We've all agreed. And I also am not in agreement with robbing Peter to pay Paul. When years back when we were looking at the library project, the council was presented with the idea of borrowing from wastewater treatment to pay for a piece of land. And that was a no-go. And I would be a no-go on that as well. So I would like some information on other ways that you would like to see this being funded before we come to a vote. So I think a work session before the next meeting is in order. Councillor Barwick.
Yeah, I support that. I agree with you in that I would like to know, how we're going to pay for it as soon as possible. I understand we can agree to get it done and we need to get it done. But I do want to know as soon as possible. If we're saying yes, I want to know how we're going to do it, because what happens, 2 years down the road from now, do we go through another bad economy where maybe we won't be able to afford it like we said we would? And I'd rather know where it's coming from before we say yes to it.
Precisely. Any other questions or comments for Scott on this subject? Okay, we'll go through the next part of the agenda is mayor's business, and the mayor's doing his business, whatever he had an emergency to take care of, so we get his report next time. We'll move into councillor comments. Personally, I don't have a report tonight as the Traffic Safety Commission meeting is later this week. So my report will come at the next meeting. And now I'll just go around the screen clockwise and I see Councillor Barwick.
Short and sweet, no report tonight.
Very well, thank you, sir. Councillor Parker.
Hi there, thank you. Yes, Historic Review Commission met last night, working on some more grants, also putting together a consolidated report on all of the graves that are in our cemetery that we take such good care of. A number of those files were on paper. And so we're in the process of computerizing that so that researchers, families, whatever, will be able to get that. So we're still feeling a little bit of the backwinds of the fact that Carol Palmer had to leave the committee, and reassembling our energy there. But the committee's hoping to do another cleanup. Two exciting developments that are coming up on, first of all, the first one is Saturday. This Saturday, April 10th, at Eco Park. There's an effort put together by a group of citizens who aren't officially affiliated with the city, but have adopted the wonderful name of Friends of Canby City Parks. And I've worked with them a couple of weekends to help take ivy, invasive ivy, off of the trees at Eco Park. They are participating with the Canby Fire Department and the Canby Parks Division to work on the down trees in Eco Park. So the fire department and the parks are going to be out there on Saturday, and they're looking for people to help haul out the underbrush and the trees. They tell me any skill level accepted. And I said, does that even include me? And they thought twice and they said, yes, even you. So that's going on the 10th. And then finally, this just in. On Earth Day, April 22nd, I've been talking to Calvin, our downtown coordinator and tourist coordinator, about how the downtown raised beds are full of weeds, and how I'd be willing to adopt one of those. So Calvin is working on a quick turnaround program to have a Earth Day cleanup of those downtown planters. So we'll see how quickly we can spin on a dime and get this going for Earth Day. But on Thursday, the 22nd, right now, tentatively, we have a plan for volunteers to meet downtown and to go through and clean out those containers of what my dad used to call chickweed and put in some flowers. So that's my report.
Thank you, Councilor Parker. Councilor Spoon.
I do not have liaison reports or comments, but I do have a question for Scott since he's there that was just kind of unrelated to everything else. This was a question I asked you a while ago, but it was pretty close to the ice storm. I had some citizens reach out to me because there are portions of town that still have significant debris from the ice storm across sidewalks or the bike lane. And they were kind of wondering if there is a city deadline for doing it before they should report it, or how that's going to work, or if we've decided that yet. We're getting, almost 2 months out from the ice storm, and I wanted to make sure everyone had enough time, but I've seen some of it myself, and it is, at some point it needs to be taken care of. So do you know how we plan to handle that at this point, so they can have some heads up on the deadlines?
Yeah, thank you, Counselor. We haven't put anything in, specific as a date of absolute, but it's probably getting to the point where we want to start working on that. And I think asking people to voluntarily comply, of course, and working with some communication efforts might be in order. I think we're still kind of just at the tail end of that, getting to Councilor Parker's just recent report a minute ago about the cleanup this weekend, and still pulling things out of our own city facilities and so forth. But I know there are safety concerns about what you were talking about, Councilor Spoon. And so I'll work with our staff, our public works team, and our code enforcement officer on how we might want to do something proactively to encourage people to pull that stuff that's that's their responsibility. Now, the key is it's the private property owner's responsibility for certain things, and the city is responsible for others, but we'll work on that.
Sure. Is there, when you kind of decide that, would you mind sending us all an email on what the preferred process was? If people have concerns about it, where they could call in and see if it's the city or, however that wants to be handled, would you follow up with us so that I could follow up with the citizens?
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Councilor Banks.
Thank you, Councillor Hensley. The Canby School District, I have a very brief report. Canby School District has hired a superintendent search consulting firm, which is pretty typical for school districts to find new superintendents, both statewide and nationwide. Now they're undergoing interviews and discussions with vested interests around town on what we want in a superintendent, and I think that they did send all of you a notice about this. That's all about I have to report. There was no library board meeting. I reported last time that we do have a school board election. There's 8 candidates, 2 for each of the 4 spots. I don't think I have anything new to report there. And again, the library board didn't meet since we met last. So that's all I have today.
Thank you, Councillor Banks. Councillor Tibbles.
Mine is brief as well, as my reports will be on the next meeting, but I would add to Councillor Spoon's point. I think when I drive around town, I see a lot of down trees that have, and let's call them big and small, and some of them are in front of apartment complexes or townhouse complexes. And I often wonder, is the reason those aren't moving because it's the property management company that is removed from the situation? And how can we best create a community solution to that? And I actually think that there are a fair amount of people within the city that have fire pits that would actually love to have that firewood. I think it's just can I take it? Should I take it? It's been sitting there forever. So if we could create, I don't know if that's I personally don't have a Facebook. Seems to be the best way to communicate on like a Canby Now or something like that. But if we could create those communication channels, there are people who are like, yeah, if you tell me you want it out of your yard, I'll come and get it with my truck for the fire pit. I bet you that the city will resolve itself with just doing something like that. So I think it's just a communication channel. So
Very
that
good.
is all I have.
Okay, that's a great idea, actually. So yeah, we'll get it out on Canby Now. Maybe we could do that possibly. All right, that moves us into city administrators, business and staff reports. Do you have anything else for us, Scott?
I've got 3 quick things, Council President, and I'll just roll through these here. First of all, again, just to remind the council, we did reopen the city facilities to the public this week. Actually, the library started at the end of last week, kind of on a different schedule, but so now all of our city facilities that were formerly open to the public are back open to the public again. We did that on a modified basis to sort of ramp up to a back on a full schedule. Of course, I'm sure you've all heard the news at this point that Clackamas County, unfortunately, moved backward in the risk category. We went from moderate back to high as of this Friday, and that is a 2-week period with assessment before that 2-week period is up. That doesn't necessarily impact our city reopening. But it does, we're already doing the things we need to do within the high risk category. It adds a little bit more potential work, but more so it's more problematic if it goes back another step, which would be back to the extreme level, which is the highest. And then in that case, we'd probably have to close again. So we certainly hope that that's not the case. But at any rate, the facilities are back open to the public on a limited schedule, and I sent that out to you in an email a little while back. The downtown project, the Quiet Zone and the Arch, just wanted to give you an update on that you heard that a while back. We're working with our contractor. They have received our notice to proceed. We are awaiting some final right of entry permits with the railroad and then some other construction permits. And once we have those in hand, you'll see the downtown work beginning, and we'll give you another heads up when that's going to start. But we're looking at the actual construction probably starting in about 2 months in downtown. The work on the arch is already beginning, so that takes place somewhere in a fabrication shop, and then that'll be lined up with installation during the construction phase of the project. So just wanted you to know that even though it's kind of in a period of just permitting and finalizing everything, the project is proceeding and will be in construction in the not too distant future. Lastly, Locus Street Park improvements that we've been working on. We just completed the repaving of the basketball court. and we'll be putting the new painted lines in that very soon. That's in addition to other work that's already begun or that's already been completed, which is re-roofing the restroom facility there and replacing all of the play equipment. And then we basically redid the park sign and kind of refreshed that. So the park is substantially on its way to the full completion of the projects that were anticipated. The one project remaining inside the park is the construction of a picnic shelter, which is anticipated in next year's fiscal year. And that will then be the complete renovation of that park. So we're pleased about that. And I think our community is appreciative. And that concludes my report.
Okay, thank you, Scott. Second opportunity for citizen input. Melissa, are there any citizens that want to input?
There are not.
Okay, action review.
You've adopted ordinance number.
Oh, we have a question from Councilor Banks. What's that?
I'm sorry, I meant to ask earlier. Councilor Parker, you have these two events that you mentioned. You didn't mention when they were. April 10th, we have the
Cleanup.
Park. Is there a potential, a specific time that's been identified?
10 to 2.
Okay. And what about the Earth Day thing?
That is being generated in real time.
Okay. Thank you.
Stay tuned. Okay, thank you. Melissa, action review, please.
Okay, you have adopted ordinance number 1545 and passed ordinance numbers 1546 and 1548 to a second reading on April 21st. And you also passed resolution number 1345.
Okay, thank you. I will take a motion to adjourn. Councilor Parker, are you adjourning?
No, actually, I wanted to thank you. People may not know that you had to step in at the very last minute, unprepared for tonight's meeting, and I think you did a splendid job. So thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Parker.
I'll move we adjourn.
I'll second.
Councilor Banks, did you have a question? It's a non-debatable motion, by the way.
No, I just also wanted to praise you for your performance tonight. It's 9:03. This is the earliest meeting we've had in 3 months. And, I'm thinking like Tracy for mayor. And actually, I'm joking here. I think that Brian's a fine mayor, but nice job tonight.
Thank you. So I have a motion and a second for adjournment. All those in favor? Aye. All right, folks, we need to go on to the other link for the executive session, and we'll see you over there. Good night, Canby.